terrified, soaking wet 10-year-old boy, burst into a Mafia boss's restaurant, sobbing, "They took my sister! Please, only a king can save her." Unbeknownst to the boy, his sister had uncovered something she shouldn't have, and the king never ignored a child who called him by his true name. Lorenzo Vitali, a man who cherished his peace, detested interruptions during dinner. The private dining room at Loyauté, his esteemed restaurant on Chicago's North Side, was his sanctuary. Here, neither phones nor frantic enforcers dared intrude. Only he, a glass of Barolo, and the expensive silence he meticulously maintained. So, when the front doors violently crashed open at 9:47 p.m., his hand instinctively darted towards the Beretta concealed beneath his jacket. "Boss!" Marco, his head of security, stumbled into view, frantically chasing something small and fast. "Boss, I'm sorry." A child, no older than 10 or 11, drenched from the October rain, sprinted past Marco as if propelled by lightning. His sneakers squeaked against the marble floor, and in his hands he clutched a battered spiral notebook as if it were his sole lifeline. The boy bypassed the security checkpoint, unflinchingly dodging 3 of Lorenzo's men who stepped into his path with surprising agility, making a beeline for Lorenzo's table, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Please!" The word exploded from him. "Please, you have to help me." Lorenzo's men immediately closed in, hands outstretched towards the boy, but Lorenzo merely raised a single finger, and they froze mid-stride. The child collapsed to his knees in front of Lorenzo's table, rain dripping from his dark hair onto the opulent Persian rug. His brown eyes were wide with panic and brimming with tears. "Please, Mr. Vitali, please save my sister." His voice cracked as he continued. "They took her. She said, 'Only a king can beat thieves.' You're the king, right?" Lorenzo deliberately, slowly, set down his wine glass. In 3 decades of orchestrating Chicago's most sophisticated criminal enterprise, he had witnessed much, pleas for mercy, protection, revenge. But a child? That was new. "How do you know my name?" Lorenzo's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Everyone knows," the boy sniffed, wiping his nose with his sleeve. "My sister told me. She said if anything ever happened, if we ever needed real help, I should find the king of Chicago. That's you. Your sister's smart." Lorenzo leaned back in his chair, scrutinizing the boy. "What's your name?" Danny Chun." "And your sister?" Elena Chun. She's 16. They took her 3 hours ago." Danny's hands trembled as he held up the notebook. "She left this. I think it's important. I think that's why they took her." Lorenzo gestured for the notebook. Danny practically hurled it at him, desperation emanating from his very being. The pages were covered in numbers, not random ones. Lorenzo recognized encryption patterns, algorithmic sequences, and code strings that appeared almost musical. In the margins, meticulous tiny handwriting detailed notes. ESHA 256 variant, possible backdoor, wallet signature matches cartel pattern. Lorenzo's pulse quickened, though his expression remained unperturbed. He had encountered such work before. His own cyber team employed similar methods to trace offshore accounts and money laundering operations. "Where did your sister get this?" He maintained a casual tone, but Marco, sensing the shift in his boss's demeanor, stepped closer. "She's really smart with math and computers." Danny's words tumbled out rapidly now. "Like, genius smart. She does these puzzle things online, code-breaking competitions. Last week, she found this weird string of numbers on some forum. She thought it was just another puzzle, but when she started solving it, she cracked something she wasn't supposed to." Lorenzo finished. Danny nodded frantically. "These guys came to our apartment tonight. They had guns. They said Elena knew too much, that she'd found their vault or something. They said she had to finish the job or they'd—" His voice broke completely. "They said they'd make sure she never solved another puzzle again." Lorenzo continued to flip through the pages. The mathematics were beyond him, but he recognized immense value when he saw it. This was no child's homework. This was the key to someone's fortune and their security. "Did you see these men? Any names?" "One of them had a tattoo." Danny traced the pattern in the air. A snake wrapped around a cross, on his neck. "And they were speaking Spanish sometimes. The boss guy, he called someone on the phone, said something like, 'We got her, and Mendoza wants it done by dawn.'" Lorenzo's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Mendoza. Diego Mendoza ran the Southside cartel operations. Lorenzo's primary rival for the past 5 years. They had an understanding. Stay out of each other's territory, maintain the peace, and Chicago remained profitable for everyone. But if Mendoza was kidnapping teenage hackers... Boss, Marco leaned down, his voice low. The Mendoza family's been moving crypto for months, big amounts. If this girl can access their vault... I know what it means. Lorenzo rose, all 6 feet of calculated power. He looked down at Danny, who gazed up at him with the desperate hope of someone who had gambled everything on an impossible chance. Every instinct urged Lorenzo to send the boy home. This wasn't his problem. Getting involved meant war with Mendoza, complications he didn't need. But then he looked at the notebook again, at the brilliant, precise handwriting of a 16-year-old girl who had accidentally stumbled into the heart of a cartel's fortune. A girl who could crack codes professional hackers couldn't touch. A girl who, if Mendoza had his way, would either vanish forever or become a weapon against Lorenzo himself. Marco, Lorenzo said quietly, get the team together. All of them. We're getting this girl back. Lorenzo handed the notebook to Marco, then looked down at Danny. You did the right thing coming here, kid, but I need you to tell me everything, every single detail about what happened tonight. Can you do that? Danny nodded so hard his whole body shook. Yes. Yes, sir. Anything. Just please save Elena. She's all I have. Lorenzo placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, a rare gesture of reassurance. Then, let's go find her, sister. Because if there's one thing I hate more than people interrupting my dinner... He glanced towards the rain-soaked windows where the Chicago night waited, its thieves taking what didn't belong to them. Lorenzo led Danny to a private office on the 2nd floor, away from prying eyes. Marco followed, along with Vincent Chen. No relation to the kid, but Lorenzo's best tech analyst. If anyone could decipher the notebook's contents, it was Vincent. Danny sat in a leather chair that swallowed him whole, still clutching his wet jacket. Someone brought him hot chocolate, but it remained untouched on the desk. Start from the beginning, Lorenzo said, settling opposite him. Tell me about Elena. Danny's eyes welled up with tears again, but he blinked them back. She's not like other kids. When she was 7, she was doing calculus. By 10, she was teaching herself programming languages. Our parents, his voice caught. They died in a car accident 2 years ago. Elena's been taking care of us ever since. How? Lorenzo asked. A 16-year-old can't work full-time. She does freelance coding, website stuff, data analysis, and she enters these online competitions, cryptography challenges, puzzle tournaments. Sometimes there's prize money, Danny's hands twisted together. But mostly she just loves solving things. She says numbers make sense when nothing else does. Vincent leaned forward, the notebook open in his hands. These algorithms, Danny, your sister taught herself this? She learns from YouTube, online courses, forums. She's always on her computer. Danny looked at Vincent desperately. Is it bad what she found? Vincent exchanged a glance with Lorenzo. It's remarkable, and yes, very bad for her. Tell him, Lorenzo instructed. He deserves to know what his sister walked into. Vincent pointed to a sequence on one of the pages. Your sister found what we call a cryptocurrency wallet address. Think of it like a bank account number, but for digital money. These particular patterns match a known cartel operation. Based on her notes, she traced the encryption protecting the wallet and started breaking it down, layer by layer. She thought it was just a puzzle, Danny whispered. There's this forum she visits. Cryptic Minds, it's called. People post challenges. She said someone posted this weird number string and challenged people to decode it. She didn't know it was real. Someone posted cartel financial information as a public puzzle? Marco's eyebrows shot up. That's a trap, Lorenzo said coldly. Or an inside job. Someone wanted that wallet cracked and figured the best way to do it was to crowdsource it to hackers who didn't know what they were really looking at. Vincent nodded. But Elena was the only one who got close. See these notations? She identified the encryption type, found a backdoor vulnerability, and was maybe 70% through cracking the access codes. If she'd finished, Lorenzo concluded, she could empty the vault. How much money? Danny asked in a small voice. Lorenzo looked at Vincent, who studied the calculations. Based on these transaction patterns, somewhere between $500 million and $700 million. The number hung in the air like a bomb. Danny's face went white. That's why they took her. They want her to finish it. Not just finish it, Lorenzo stated. They want to drain it before anyone else can. Mendoza's vault, the one your sister found, it's where he keeps money from drug operations, weapon sales, everything. If someone empties it, his entire empire collapses overnight. But Elena won't help them. She won't. Danny's voice rose with panic. She told me, when they broke in, she screamed that she'd never help criminals. They hit her and dragged her out anyway. Lorenzo's expression darkened. Violence against women, especially children, violated even his code. What time did they take her? 6:45. Elena called me, crying, telling me to run and find you. Then the line went dead, Danny recounted, pulling out a cracked iPhone and showing it to them. I must have tried calling her back 100 times. Nothing. Marco checked his watch, a grim expression on his face. That was 3 hours ago. If Mendoza wants this vault cracked by dawn, he likely has a mere 6 hours to coerce her cooperation. Danny repeated, an undercurrent of desperation in his voice. She won't cooperate. She's incredibly stubborn. She'll fight them every step of the way. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, Lorenzo murmured, his voice barely audible. Vincent carefully closed the notebook he had been examining. Boss, if we're interpreting this correctly, Elena isn't merely intelligent. She's a bona fide prodigy. The mathematical formulations here are at a PhD level. She's uncovered encryption vulnerabilities that most professional hackers would overlook. The implication hung heavy in the air. If Mendoza grasped the full extent of her value beyond this specific vault, he wouldn't simply let someone of Elena's caliber walk away. Even if she succeeded in breaching the vault, she would inevitably become either a lifelong captive or a casualty. Lorenzo rose, his footsteps echoing softly as he moved towards the window. Rain lashed against the glass, transforming Chicago's cityscape into a blurry watercolor. He pondered the delicate equilibrium he had maintained for years, the meticulously crafted peace between rival factions, an unspoken understanding that had spared the city from descending into a bloodbath. To rescue this girl would undoubtedly shatter that fragile peace. Yet, to abandon her to Mendoza's mercy, if such a thing even existed, meant condemning a 16-year-old genius to death, simply for possessing an extraordinarily brilliant mind. Lorenzo turned to Danny, his gaze sharp. Did your sister create any backups of her work? Cloud storage, encrypted drives, anything at all? Danny nodded emphatically. She always backs everything up. She's notoriously paranoid about data loss. Why? Because if Mendoza extracts what he desires from Elena, Lorenzo explained, he'll eradicate every trace of her work, and quite possibly her too. But if we possess copies, Marco finished, a flicker of understanding in his eyes, we have leverage. We could complete what she began ourselves. Lorenzo's gaze returned to the notebook, observing the frantic scribbles of a teenage girl battling an insurmountable puzzle. She had likely saved Danny's life by urging him to flee. She had probably been resisting Mendoza's thugs for 3 unrelenting hours, stalling, fighting, refusing to yield. Such courage was rare, even among adults. Vincent, meticulously analyze every detail in that notebook. I need to know precisely what Elena uncovered and how close she was to completion. Lorenzo's voice hardened, adopting the chilling command that earned him his reputation as Chicago's most formidable boss. Marco, assemble the team, full tactical gear. I want every Mendoza property under surveillance by midnight. We're going to war. War? Marco questioned. No. Lorenzo's smile was thin, edged with danger. We're going to abscond with something invaluable from a thief. And then, we're going to engage in a very serious discourse about respect. Danny looked up, his eyes brimming with desperate hope. You'll save her? Truly? Lorenzo met the boy's gaze. Kid, your sister cracked a $700 million vault in her spare time. She's worth more than gold. He placed a hand on Danny's shoulder. And in my world, you meticulously protect your investments. What remained unspoken was his curiosity to meet the young woman who had inadvertently outmaneuvered Chicago's criminal underworld, armed with nothing but a laptop and genius-level stubbornness. If she survived the night, she would undoubtedly be the most captivating individual he had encountered in years. Lorenzo's war room swiftly filled. Within 20 minutes, his 5 top lieutenants were seated around the mahogany table, Elena's notebook resting in the center like a loaded weapon. Danny had been escorted to a guest room, guarded by one of Lorenzo's most trusted men. The boy required rest, but more importantly, the impending discussion was not for civilian ears, even those of the civilian who had brought them this predicament. Marco stood by the door, arms crossed. Vincent's laptop was open, the notebook's contents already photographed and uploaded. The others, Tony Filoni, Rita Duca, James Park, and old Sal Benedetti, studied the information with varying degrees of interest and alarm. Mendoza, Tony Filoni, Lorenzo's enforcer, a man built like a brick wall with fists to match, finally broke the silence. Are we truly discussing targeting Mendoza's operation? No, his captive, Vincent corrected him, without looking up. Who happens to possess information about his operation? Same difference, Tony grunted, leaning back, causing his chair to creak ominously. We have an understanding with the Southside USEA peace, albeit a tense one, but peace nonetheless. Do you grasp this girl's value to him? Everything. If we take her, that's an unequivocal declaration of war. Rita Duca, Lorenzo's consigliere and the sharpest legal mind in the room, tapped her red nails on the table. Let's be precise about what we're debating. A 16-year-old American citizen was abducted from her residence by a criminal enterprise. Legally and morally, assisting her would be entirely justifiable. Since when do we prioritize legal and moral considerations? Tony scoffed. Since it provides us with plausible deniability if this operation goes awry, Rita retorted. Public sentiment matters. Girl genius kidnapped by drug cartel plays exceedingly well if the authorities become involved. If the authorities become involved, we're all royally screwed, Sal Benedetti rasped. At 73, he was the eldest at the table, having survived more gang wars than all the others combined. This isn't about right and wrong. It's about territory and respect. Mendoza snatches someone. We rescue her. That makes him appear vulnerable. Vulnerability breeds questioning from his own people. Questioning leads to pandemonium. Pandemonium leads to opportunity. James Park, Lorenzo's financial strategist, interrupted, pushing up his glasses, his eyes gleaming. Sal is correct, but he's not perceiving the complete picture. Mendoza's vault holds over $500 million. If this girl can crack it, and we control her, we are not thieves, Marco interjected sharply. No, we are astute businessmen, James countered, and this is a business prospect of a lifetime. Consider this. Mendoza has been encroaching upon our territories for 2 years. The docks, the gambling operations, even attempting to muscle into our protection rackets. He's been relentlessly pushing, testing our boundaries. This is a form of leverage we have never possessed before. Tony shook his head. It's also a pistol pointed directly at our heads. Do you genuinely believe he'll permit us to simply walk away with the one individual who can utterly destroy him financially? He won't know we have her, Vincent stated quietly. All eyes turned to him. Not immediately. We extract Elena tonight. We keep her hidden. Let Mendoza believe she escaped or died, or that a rival crew snatched her. By the time he discerns our involvement, we will have already emptied his vault and disappeared with the funds. James finished, a triumphant smile spreading across his face. We could disarm him without firing a single shot. Or, Rita interjected, we could utilize her as a bargaining chip, return her to Mendoza in exchange for territorial concessions, a peace treaty with genuine teeth. Give her back? Marco's voice rose, a tremor of indignation in his tone. She sought our help. The kid walked through our doors asking for protection. We hand her over to the same man who abducted her? We're no better than... We're criminals. Sal interrupted Marco. Let's not deceive ourselves. The girl possesses no family beyond a 10-year-old brother. No parents, no protector. She is utterly alone in a world she barely comprehends. Whether we elect to save her or trade her, she is a pawn. That is the stark reality. She is a person, Marco snapped. She is an asset, Tony corrected. And assets possess value. The crucial question is, what do we value more, peace with Mendoza, or the potential financial windfall from that vault? The room erupted into heated debate. Voices clamored over each other. Fists slammed onto the table. Rita advocated for negotiation. James championed the financial play. Tony insisted on maintaining the status quo. Sal incessantly circled back to the perils of disrupting territorial balance. Marco stood by himself, passionately arguing for their moral obligation to assist. Lorenzo sat at the head of the table, fingers steepled, observing their arguments dismantle one another. He hadn't uttered a single word since convening the meeting. He hadn't needed to. His people were astute, fervent, and they had comprehensively laid out every conceivable angle he had already contemplated. But they were overlooking a critical element. "Enough," he stated quietly. The room instantly fell silent. Lorenzo rose, circling the table with deliberate, unhurried steps. "You are all posing the incorrect question. This isn't about Mendoza. It isn't about money or territory or peace treaties." He picked up the notebook, feeling its unexpected weight. "This is about a 16-year-old girl who is demonstrably smarter than anyone in this room. Smarter than Mendoza, and quite possibly smarter than me." He looked at each of them in turn. She accidentally deciphered a code that professional hackers couldn't even touch, in her spare time, for enjoyment. "Boss," Tony began to protest. "Allow me to finish." Lorenzo's voice hardened. "Right now, Mendoza has her confined in some warehouse, undoubtedly threatening her, perhaps harming her, relentlessly attempting to force her to breach his vault. When she succeeds, and she will, because she is that brilliant, what do you anticipate will transpire? That he will thank her and release her?" The silence provided the unequivocal answer. "She becomes an immediate liability to him the instant that vault opens. She knows too much, she can accomplish too much. At best, he imprisons her indefinitely. At worst, she vanishes into Lake Michigan." Lorenzo set the notebook down with meticulous care. Now, we could simply walk away, preserve our peace, evade the complications, allow a teenage girl to perish because it is politically expedient. He scrutinized each of them again, his gaze chilling and dissecting. Or we could acknowledge that a girl capable of cracking $700 million in encryption is worth far more than any fleeting peace accord with Diego Mendoza. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. A girl like that, loyal to us, protected by us, that is not merely an asset. That is a weapon. That is the future. Lorenzo placed both hands on the table, leaning forward. "We are retrieving her. Not for the money, not for leverage. Because Elena Chun embodies the kind of genius that appears once in a generation. And I am not foolish enough to allow Mendoza to squander her." His eyes glittered dangerously. "Besides, I am exceedingly curious to meet the girl who inadvertently declared war on Chicago's cartels with nothing but a laptop." A long silence settled over the room. Finally Sal chuckled, a dry, raspy sound of amusement. "You're just looking to add another teenage hacker to your collection of intriguing individuals, S. Winning is my objective," Lorenzo declared, his posture straightening. "And this girl is our path to achieving it." Marco's shoulders visibly relaxed. "So, we proceed tonight." "We proceed tonight," Lorenzo affirmed. "Prepare the tactical unit. I want surveillance, extraction plans, and contingency scenarios. Mendoza took something precious from someone under my protection. It's time to demonstrate why that was a grave error." No one dared to argue. The decision was final. The king had spoken. Vincent Chin meticulously arranged the notebook pages across 3 computer monitors within Lorenzo's private tech room. The space hummed with activity, showcasing more resemblance to a Silicon Valley startup than a Mafia headquarters. The constant whirring of servers, the glow of multiple screens, and the presence of equipment surpassing the cost of most homes filled the room. Lorenzo stood patiently behind him, while Marco restlessly paced near the doorway. It was well past midnight, and every passing minute meant Elena remained in Mendoza's grasp. "All right," Vincent murmured, his fingers a blur across the keyboard. "This is incredible. This girl is truly exceptional." "Tell me more," Lorenzo commanded. Vincent brought up a digital rendering of one page. "Observe these sequences." Elena is employing a methodology known as differential cryptanalysis, a highly sophisticated technique, on par with NSA-level operations. She's systematically dissecting the encryption layer by layer, meticulously searching for patterns and vulnerabilities. "In layman's terms, Vincent," Lorenzo interjected, "she's akin to picking a lock by understanding the intricate mechanics of each pin, rather than merely cycling through every conceivable key combination. Vincent scrolled through additional pages. Most hackers would resort to brute force for such a task, attempting billions of password combinations until one works. That can consume months, even years. Elena, however, discovered a mathematical shortcut. Marco ceased his pacing. Based on her current progress, how long would it take her to complete it? Vincent quickly calculated. 4 to 6 hours of focused effort, perhaps even less if she maintains her composure under pressure as effectively as she does in a relaxed state. Lorenzo checked his watch. She's been with Mendoza for 5 hours. We're running out of time. Vincent zoomed into a corner of one page. But here's the truly fascinating part. Look at this. Scribbled in tiny, almost hidden handwriting within the margin was a string of numbers. 1-1921-6877-4-3. That's an IP address, Vincent explained. A local network address. She traced the origin of the original puzzle post. She tracked Mendoza's location. Marco leaned in closer. Not Mendoza directly, but whoever uploaded that challenge to the cryptography forum. Elena wasn't merely solving the puzzle. She was investigating it. Vincent's fingers danced across the keyboard. Clever girl. She must have sensed something amiss with the challenge. Genuine cryptography enthusiasts don't typically upload 700 million vault codes for amusement. He launched mapping software, inputting the IP address into a tracing program. Lines of code scrolled across the screen, the signal bouncing through various nodes. The IP has been masked using proxy servers, but Elena left breadcrumbs of her tracking process. She was following the digital trail backward to locate the source. Vincent's eyes widened. And she succeeded, look! A map of Chicago materialized, a red pin marking a location near the docks. Warehouse District, Marco stated. Southside Territory, not just any warehouse, Lorenzo added. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through property records. 2847 South Harbor Street, registered to a shell company, Mendoza's Shell Company. We've had it flagged for 2 years as a potential distribution point. Vincent cross-referenced the address with city utility data. Power consumption surged at that location 3 days ago, far exceeding what a normal warehouse would use. Someone is operating serious equipment there. Computer equipment for Elena, Lorenzo concluded. It makes sense. If they want her to crack the vault, they need to provide her with appropriate hardware. You can't perform that level of cryptography on a smartphone. Vincent then pulled up satellite imagery of the warehouse. A single building, approximately 12,000 square feet. Loading docks on the east side. Main entrance facing north. It appears abandoned from the outside. He switched to infrared data from a recent satellite pass. Heat signatures, multiple sources, at least a dozen people inside, possibly more, and observed this pattern. He indicated concentrated heat in the center of the building. That's electronics, a lot of them running hot. Marco retrieved his own tablet, making notes. Guard positions, can't determine from satellite. We'll need eyes on the ground. Vincent switched programs again. But I can tell you they have serious security. The building's network is completely isolated. No Wi-Fi signals leaking out. No cellular connections. They've created a dead zone. Whatever Elena is doing in there, they don't want any data escaping. Lorenzo studied the warehouse location, his mind already formulating tactical scenarios. The docks were Mendoza's territory, yet not heavily populated at night. Mostly shipping containers and derelict buildings. A firefight there wouldn't immediately attract police attention, but it would undoubtedly draw Mendoza's reinforcements. What about security cameras? He inquired. Vincent pulled up traffic camera feeds from nearby intersections. City cameras cover the main roads, but not the warehouse itself. However, he rewound footage from earlier that evening. I've got something. 7 p.m., 3 black SUVs entering the warehouse district. They don't leave. He enhanced the image. The license plates were obscured, but in one frame, a door briefly opened, revealing a figure. Freeze that, Lorenzo ordered. The image pixelated as Vincent zoomed in. A man's profile was visible for perhaps half a second. On his neck, clearly discernible even in the grainy footage, was a snake wrapped around a cross. That's the tattoo Danny described, Marco breathed. Positive ID on Mendoza's crew, Vincent confirmed. They're definitely there. Lorenzo's jaw tightened. The pieces were falling into place. Elena had been brilliant enough not merely to crack the code, but to trace its origin. She had likely recognized the danger she was in even before Mendoza's men arrived. Perhaps that's why she had scribbled the IP address so hastily. Insurance in case someone came looking for her. Insurance that her little brother had unwittingly delivered straight to Chicago's most dangerous man. "How many entrances to the building?" Lorenzo asked. Vincent pulled up architectural blueprints he'd hacked from the city database. 4. Main entrance, loading dock, emergency exit on the west side, and a roof access hatch. But these blueprints are from 1987. No telling what modifications Mendoza might have made. What about nearby buildings? 2 other warehouses within 100 yards, both genuinely abandoned. Street access from 3 directions. Harbor on the east side, a water escape route if things go south. Marco studied the map. It's defensible. They chose well. They chose predictably, Lorenzo corrected. Mendoza always uses that district for sensitive operations. He believes that, because it's his territory, he's untouchable there. He's not wrong, Marco pointed out. If we hit a location that deep in his territory, every soldier he has will respond. We'll be outnumbered 10-1. Then we don't give them time to respond, Lorenzo stated. He checked his watch again. 12:47 a.m. Vincent, keep monitoring. I want to know if anyone enters or leaves that warehouse. Marco, prepare the tactical team. Light and fast. 6 men, suppressed weapons, extraction gear. When do we move? Marco asked. Lorenzo looked at the warehouse on the screen, picturing Elena inside, likely exhausted, terrified, but still fighting, still stalling, buying time she didn't know anyone would use. We move at 4 a.m., he said. 2 hours before dawn. They'll be tired, expecting her to break any minute. We'll hit them when they're focused on her, not on perimeter security. Vincent nodded. I'll have communications ready. We can jam their phones, buy you a few extra minutes before reinforcements can be called. Do it. Lorenzo turned to leave, then paused. Vincent, one more thing. That notebook, make copies, multiple copies, physical and digital. Store them in different locations. You think Mendoza will come after them? I think Elena Chen's work is worth killing for, Lorenzo said quietly. And I want to make sure if something happens to her, her genius doesn't die with her. He exited the tech room, Marco following closely behind. In a few hours, they would be going to war. Not the kind of war fought in the streets with armies, but the dangerous kind, surgical, swift, and potentially catastrophic if anything went wrong. But Lorenzo hadn't built an empire by playing it safe. He'd built it by recognizing value when he saw it. And Elena Chen, she was the most valuable thing in Chicago tonight. It was time to collect his investment. At 1:30 a.m., 2 unmarked cars silently pulled into the shadows near the Chicago docks. No headlights, no engine noise above an idle. Only 4 of Lorenzo's finest scouts, armed with surveillance equipment that cost more than the cars themselves. Tommy Ritchie, Lorenzo's reconnaissance specialist, crouched on the roof of an abandoned warehouse 200 yards from the target location. Through night vision binoculars, he counted guards. 3 on the north entrance, he whispered into his radio. 2 patrolling the perimeter, another 2 on the loading dock, all carrying automatic weapons, not even trying to hide it. Confidence or stupidity? Marco's voice crackled back through his earpiece. Both. Tommy slowly panned the binoculars. They think they're safe in their own territory. Movements are sloppy. One guy's smoking, another's on his phone, but the weapons are serious. AK-47s, maybe MP5s. These aren't street soldiers. This is trained security. In the car below, Marco sat beside Lorenzo, monitoring the audio feed. Lorenzo stared at the warehouse, his face unreadable in the darkness. What about the building itself? Marco asked. 2 industrial generators running on the east side, Tommy reported. Big ones. They're powering something that needs serious juice. As their surveillance continued, heat signatures emanating from exhaust vents signaled cooling systems operating at maximum capacity, indicating a substantial computer infrastructure within. Whatever computer setup they've got in there, it's major, Lorenzo noted, leaning forward with heightened attention. He then highlighted the guards' rigid movement patterns and predictable rotations every 20 minutes. They're being careful, but predictable. Same route every time. Suddenly, Tommy, adjusting his position, announced, "Wait, got a vehicle approaching." A white van arrived at the loading dock, and two men swiftly unloaded what appeared to be more computer equipment server racks. Tommy, zooming in with his binoculars, observed, "Looks like they're still setting things up for Elena." Lorenzo's response was sharp and quiet. "They're giving her everything she needs to crack the vault." Meanwhile, on the rooftop, Lisa Moreno, Tommy's partner, had positioned a parabolic microphone toward the warehouse's main entrance. This sophisticated device was capable of isolating conversations from significant distances, filtering out ambient noise. She fine-tuned the frequency, effectively eliminating the generator hum and distant traffic. Soon, Spanish voices emerged. "Got audio?" Lisa whispered, already immersed in translating. Her bilingual upbringing in Chicago's little village neighborhood proved invaluable. Through her headphones, a conversation between two guards became distressingly clear. "Told him the girl's being difficult." "Difficult how?" "Won't cooperate. Keeps making mistakes on purpose. Says the code's more complex than she thought. Mendoza's getting impatient. He wants this done by sunrise." A chilling question followed. "What if she can't do it?" After a tense pause, the answer came. "Then she's not useful anymore." Lisa's jaw tightened. She immediately relayed the chilling exchange to Marco, who promptly informed Lorenzo. "They're threatening her," Marco stated, his voice laced with indignation. "Of course they are," Lorenzo replied, checking his watch. It was 1:47 a.m., with sunrise anticipated at 6:15 a.m. "She's stalling. Smart girl, but she can't stall forever." Tommy's voice broke through again. "Boss, getting more activity. 3 more guards just came out for a smoke break. They're talking about—" "Hold on." He repositioned, zooming in on their faces. One guard had a distinctive snake and cross tattoo on his neck, a match to Dai's description. "That's our positive ID. These are definitely Mendoza's people." Lisa, with expert precision, fine-tuned her microphone, catching fragments of the guard's conversation, now in English. "Doesn't matter if she cooperates. Once the vault's open, boss says no witnesses. Girl knows too much." Another voice added, "What about the brother? Mendoza's got people looking. Kid's probably hiding somewhere." The first guard scoffed. "Won't matter. After sunrise, none of this matters." Lorenzo's expression hardened. They weren't just after Elena. They'll go after Danny eventually, too. Loose ends. He questioned Tommy. "How many total inside?" "Counting guards and the tech people who came in earlier, 15, maybe 18. Could be more in the interior sections I can't see." Marco pulled up the building schematics on his tablet. "We'll be outnumbered 3-to-1 minimum." Lorenzo's resolve was unwavering. "Then we make every shot count." He scrutinized the guard patterns Tommy was meticulously documenting. "What about escape routes?" "Harbor's 60 yards to the east. They've got a speedboat docked there, probably their emergency exit. Streets to the north and west, but those lead deeper into Mendoza territory. South side's blocked by containers." March elaborated. "We need to extract through the north or take the water route." Marco interjected. "Water's too exposed, too many variables." Lorenzo conceded. "North it is, fast extraction, straight back to our territory, 3-minute window maximum before Mendoza's reinforcements arrive." Lisa's hand shot up. "Wait, someone's talking inside. Different voice, younger." She increased the microphone's sensitivity, angling it toward a ventilation shaft. The audio, muffled and distorted, eventually yielded a clear female voice, exhausted, yet defiant. "Already told you, this encryption has 7-layer security. Each layer needs—" A male voice interrupted, harsh and threatening. "Don't care about layers. You've had 5 hours. Stop stalling and finish it." "I'm not stalling. Look at the code yourself if you think it's so easy." The distinct sound of something crashing was followed by Elena's cry. Then, silence. Lisa's hands trembled as she removed her headphones. "They're hurting her." Marco looked to Lorenzo, urgency etched on his face. "Boss, we need to move now." But Lorenzo held up a hand, intent on Tommy's continuing surveillance report. He knew that decisions fueled by emotion could be deadly. He needed every piece of information. "Any sign of Mendoza himself?" he inquired. "Negative," Tommy replied. "Just his soldiers and tech people. He's probably at a secure location, waiting for confirmation the vault's open." "Smart," Lorenzo admitted. "Doesn't put himself at risk until the job's done." More voices filtered through Lisa's microphone, guards discussing the timeline, Mendoza's orders, and, chillingly, how they would dispose of the girl once her work was finished. Each word was a stark reminder of Elena's precarious situation. Lorenzo made his decision. "Pull back to the staging point," he ordered. "We've seen enough." Tommy sounded surprised. "Boss, we know their numbers, their positions, their timeline. We know Elena's alive and still fighting. That's all we need." Lorenzo's voice was cold, calculating. "Gather the team. Full tactical briefing at 300 a.m. We move at 4 a.m., Marco confirmed. "That gives us a 2-hour window before sunrise." "Before they kill her," Lorenzo corrected, his gaze unwavering. "They want the vault open by dawn. We'll take her before they get their wish." Inside the warehouse, Elena Chin bought time she didn't realize she had. She fought with every brilliant neuron in her exhausted brain, stalling, making deliberate errors, pretending the code was far more complex than it truly was. She had been doing this for 6 hours, and she knew she had perhaps 3 more before her captors saw through her deception. Yet, Lorenzo Vitali was done watching. He'd gleaned enough to understand the layout, the enemy, and the stakes. Now, it was time to show Diego Mendoza the consequences of stealing from the king. "Prep the team," Lorenzo commanded, his voice carrying the undeniable weight of absolute authority. "Tell them to bring their best gear. We're going into the belly of the beast, and we're coming out with Chicago's most valuable asset." Marcos offered a grim smile. "Time to go shopping." "No," Lorenzo corrected, his eyes glinting in the pale pre-dawn light. "Time to go to war." The cars peeled away from the docks, vanishing into Chicago's pre-dawn darkness. In 3 hours, everything would change. Elena Chen's wrists burned where the zip ties bit into her skin. Handcuffed to a metal chair for 6 grueling hours, her fingers cramped from typing, and her back screamed from the rigid position she was forced to maintain. The warehouse air was frigid, though perhaps it was just the icy grip of fear. Around her, 3 computer monitors glowed with her code lines of algorithms, encryption patterns, mathematical sequences that would evoke both awe and envy from most professional hackers. Her work, her genius, was being exploited to obliterate someone's life savings, or worse. She didn't know whose money it was. She didn't want to know. Standing behind her, a man named Carlos casually rested a gun on his hip. He had been her primary guard for the past 3 hours, scrutinizing her every keystroke. Unlike some of the other men who had abducted her from her apartment, Carlos spoke decent English. "You're stalling," Carlos stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "I'm not stupid, girl. I know what real progress looks like." Elena's hands trembled as she typed. "I'm not stalling. This encryption is military grade. 7 layers of security, each one more complex than the last. You can't just... My boss says you were 70% done when we found you. That was 6 hours ago. You should be finished by now." "Your boss doesn't understand advanced cryptography," Elena shot back, immediately regretting her defiant tone. Carlos moved closer, his shadow engulfing her keyboard. "My boss understands that you're a 16-year-old kid who got too smart for her own good. He also understands that if you don't finish this by sunrise..." He let the unspoken threat hang in the cold air. Elena swallowed hard. She had been consumed by terror when they burst into her apartment. 3 armed men moving with chilling military precision. They knew precisely what they wanted: her laptop, her notebooks, and her. Danny had been at his friend's house. Thank God she had managed to scream at him over the phone to run, to hide, to find help. But what kind of help could a 10-year-old boy find against armed men? "Find the king," she had whispered in those desperate seconds before they ripped the phone from her hand. "If you're ever in trouble, find the king of Chicago." It was something she'd overheard at school, whispered in hallways by kids whose older siblings ran with the wrong crowds. Lorenzo Vitali. The name was uttered with equal parts fear and respect. A mafia boss, a criminal, but reputedly a man of principles. A man who protected those under his care. She had never imagined she would need to invoke that name. Now, sitting in this freezing warehouse, Elena prayed Danny had been intelligent enough to understand. Smart enough to find Lorenzo Vitali. Smart enough to survive. "Show me your progress," Carlos demanded. Elena pulled up her latest work on the screen. To an untrained eye, it looked legitimate complex code, percentage bars indicating advancement, technical jargon that meant nothing to most people. But Elena had been deliberately sabotaging her own work for hours. She had introduced subtle errors into the algorithm-wrong variables, misplaced decimal points, things that would cause the decryption to fail at the last moment, forcing her to start over and troubleshoot. Each mistake bought her another 20 minutes, another half hour, another chance for a miracle. "This sequence here," she said, pointing to a line of code, "it's giving me errors. I need to recalculate the hash function, or the entire thing will corrupt when we attempt the final breakthrough." Carlos stared at the screen as if it were written in ancient Greek, which, to him, it might as well have been. "How much longer?" 2 hours, maybe 3. His hand moved to his gun. "You said 2 hours 3 hours ago." "Because I keep finding new security measures." Elena's voice cracked with genuine frustration, not at the code, but at her dire situation. "Whoever built this vault was paranoid. Each layer I penetrate reveals another snare. Rashness will permanently lock the entire system. Is that truly your objective?" Carlos scrutinized her expression, seeking any hint of deception. Elena had swiftly grasped that displaying genuine emotion aided her narrative. Her visible exhaustion and apprehension lent her credibility. "My employer's patience is wearing thin," Carlos eventually stated, "and when he loses patience, dire consequences befall people." "I comprehend," Elena whispered, and indeed she did. These were not individuals who would permit her to escape. She understood the moment they seized her from her apartment that she was a witness, a burden, a loose end. They would eliminate her the instant that vault yielded, so she would endeavor to keep it sealed indefinitely. As Carlos turned to communicate via radio, Elena's fingers deftly glided across a notepad beside her keyboard. She rapidly transcribed bogus encryption keys, intentionally flawed algorithms, and information designed to misdirect anyone who might later discover her notes. Should they compel her to finish, if she could no longer delay, she aimed to leave behind a misleading trail. At least then, even in death, she would savor the triumph of having outmaneuvered them. Yet, beneath these fabricated entries, in minuscule, almost imperceptible script, she had penned something else over the preceding hours. A desperate plea, a fervent hope. "Danny, if you are reading this, I tried. I am sorry. Be wiser than I. Be safer. Discover a king. Elena." A new voice drew her attention. One of the technical consultants they had enlisted, a man in his 30s with expensive eyewear and weary eyes, approached her workstation. Unlike the guards, he genuinely comprehended her actions. "This error here," he remarked, indicating her screen. "This is intentional." Elena's heart skipped a beat. "You have been embedding flaws into your own code, minor ones, easily overlooked. But I've been observing." He drew nearer, his voice hushed to evade the guards. "You are brilliant. This work is astonishing. But you are also going to get yourself killed." Elena met his gaze. "They will kill me regardless." "Probably," he conceded. "But if you conclude this, you might gain a few more hours. If you continue to stall," he glanced at Carlos, "they will make it painful." "I do not care," Elena asserted truthfully. "I will not assist criminals in stealing money." The consultant's expression softened. "Noble, foolish, but noble." He straightened, raising his voice now. "Her code contains errors. She requires at least another hour to properly debug it." Carlos swore in Spanish. "The boss demands this be finished by 6 a.m. When then the boss needs to grasp that cracking $700 million in encryption necessitates time." The consultant departed, leaving Elena once more with her guards. She returned to her screens, her hands trembling. Each keystroke represented a small act of defiance. Every engineered error was a triumph. Outside, dawn was approaching. Her captor's forbearance was diminishing. And somewhere in Chicago, she prayed her younger brother had found the king, because Elena Chin was running out of time, and her delaying tactics were exhausted. The sole question was, which would falter first, her code or her captor's mercy? She typed another line, another error, securing a few more minutes of existence. "Hold on, Danny," she thought. Please hold on. The king was her only hope now, if he existed at all. The basement beneath Lorenzo's restaurant reeked of aged concrete and fresh dread. No blood, no torture implements were visible. Lorenzo was not that type of boss. However, the solitary bare bulb dangling from the ceiling, The metal chair bolted to the floor, and the soundproofed walls spoke volumes. Fear resided in anticipation, not execution. At 2:15 a.m., Marco ushered in a man with a bag over his head. When Marco removed it, the man blinked against the abrupt light, his face already slick with perspiration. Raone Gutierrez, a low-level enforcer for Mendoza's syndicate. Lorenzo's operatives had apprehended him 2 days prior for operating protection rackets in neutral territory, a breach of their accord. He had been held in a cell ever since, awaiting either release or being made an example of. Tonight, he would prove useful. Lorenzo sat opposite him, perfectly composed, impeccably dressed, hands clasped on the table. He resembled a businessman poised to discuss a merger, not a crime lord conducting an interrogation. "Ramon," Lorenzo began congenially, "thank you for joining me." Ramon's eyes darted around the room, settling on Marco by the door, then back to Lorenzo. I wasn't. Relax. You're not here concerning the protection racket." Lorenzo poured 2 glasses of water from a pitcher, sliding one across to Ramon. "You're here to address some inquiries regarding a warehouse on South Harbor Street." Ramon's face paled. He did not touch the water. "I don't know what you're—" 2847 South Harbor, Lorenzo continued smoothly. "Mendoza's operation. You were there yesterday afternoon, delivering provisions to the guards. We possess photographs." That was a fabrication, but Ramon was unaware. The man's throat worked as he swallowed. "I merely deliver food. I don't know what transpires inside." "Of course not. You are merely following directives." Lorenzo leaned back. "Permit me to share what I know, Ramon. Then you may determine the extent of your candor." "Fair?" Ramon nodded slowly. "Mendoza abducted a 16-year-old girl from her residence last night. An American citizen, a high school student, someone who has never harmed anyone. He is holding her in that warehouse, compelling her to decrypt an encrypted vault." Lorenzo's voice remained conversational, but his eyes were frigid. "Now, I require 3 pieces of information. 1. How many individuals are guarding her? 2. What is Mendoza's contingency plan if something goes awry? 3. What becomes of the girl once she completes the task? I cannot, if Mendoza discovers I spoke." "Mendoza will not discover," Marco stated from the doorway. "Because you will be in protective custody before dawn. Complete immunity, a new identity if desired. All you must do is provide the information we need." "And if I do not?" Ramon's voice trembled. Lorenzo's expression remained unchanged. "Then you return to your cell, and tomorrow morning we contact Mendoza and inform him we apprehended you collaborating with federal investigators. We can fabricate a very convincing paper trail, phone records, bank deposits, meeting logs." Ramon's eyes widened. "You'd be signing my death warrant." "No, Ramon. You signed it yourself when you chose to align with a man who kidnaps children." Lorenzo took a sip of his water. "I am offering you an opportunity to act honorably. Accept it or decline." The silence stretched for 30 seconds. Ramon's hands quivered, his breathing accelerated. Lorenzo simply waited, as patient as stone. Finally, Ramon broke. 18 men, he whispered. 12 guards, 6 technical personnel. They rotate shifts every 4 hours. The next rotation is at 4 a.m. Lorenzo nodded. "Contingency plan? If the warehouse is raided, they evacuate to a secondary location, an old meatpacking plant on West 35th Street. Mendoza owns it through a shell company. It is set up as a safe house. Weapons, supplies, reinforced doors, and the girl." Lorenzo's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "What happens when she opens the vault?" Ramon hesitated. This was the information that would seal his destiny, one way or another. "Tell him," Marco urged. "You've already divulged enough to condemn yourself. You might as well secure full immunity." "Mendoza," Ramon licked his lips. "Mendoza does not intend to kill her. Not immediately." Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "There is a purchaser from a cartel in Colombia. They learned Mendoza captured a genius hacker, a child who cracked encryption their own people could not touch. They desire her." The temperature in the room seemed to plummet 10 degrees. "Desire her for what?" Marco inquired, though the answer was palpable. "To work for them permanently, to breach their rival security, steal financial data, infiltrate government systems." Ramon appeared visibly ill. The buyer offered $2 million. Once the vault is opened and Mendoza confirms her abilities, the girl will be transported to Bogota on a private plane. 6 a.m. flight from a private airfield. Lorenzo's jaw clenched. This was more dire than a mere execution. Elena would not simply perish. She would vanish into international trafficking, coerced into employing her genius for cartels until she was exploited and cast aside. Where is the airfield? His voice was lethally quiet. Rockford, a small private strip Mendoza uses for smuggling, 40 miles northwest of Chicago. Lorenzo looked at Marco, who was already calculating. That is an hour's drive from the warehouse. If they move her at 5 a.m., we would never intercept them in time, Lorenzo concluded. He turned back to Ramon. This Colombian buyer, does he have representatives here in Chicago? 2 representatives. They are at a hotel downtown, awaiting confirmation. Once Mendoza gives the word, they handle the transport. Names? I do not know names, only that they are serious individuals, ex-military. They will not surrender the girl without a struggle. Lorenzo stood, buttoning his suit jacket. The interrogation had concluded. Ramon had provided them with everything they required, revealing that the stakes were far greater than a simple rescue operation. Marco, get Ramon into protective custody, full protection until this is over. Wait, Ramon interjected quickly. I told you everything. I am safe, right? Lorenzo regarded him with something akin to pity. Ramon, you just betrayed one of the most perilous men in Chicago. Safety is relative, but you will be alive, which is more than you would be if we had returned you to Mendoza. He walked to the door, then paused. One more thing. Is Mendoza planning to be at the warehouse when the vault opens? No, he never gets his hands dirty. He will be at his estate in Kenilworth, awaiting confirmation. Good. Lorenzo's smile was cold and sharp as a blade. Then he will not see us coming. As they ascended the stairs back to the main level, Marco spoke quietly. Boss, if the Colombians are involved, this is more significant than we initially believed. International trafficking. I am aware of what it is, Lorenzo cut him off, and I am aware of what we are going to do about it. We hit the warehouse at 4 a.m. The objective wasn't merely Elena's extraction. It was a resounding declaration to every cartel, every trafficker, every despicable individual who dared to abduct children from Chicago's streets. And what message would that be? Lorenzo's gaze was as unyielding as cut diamonds. This city is my domain, and I safeguard what is mine. He glanced at his watch. 2:47 a.m. In just over an hour, his team would storm that warehouse. In less than 3 hours, Elena Chin would either be free or they would all perish. Prepare the team, Lorenzo commanded. Full tactical gear. And Marco? Yes, boss? Instruct them to carry extra ammunition. Should those Colombians appear, we are taking no prisoners. Marco nodded, departing to relay the orders. Lorenzo remained alone in the corridor, his thoughts consumed by a 16-year-old girl fighting for her life, armed only with her sharp intellect and desperate courage. Not if I reach her first, he mused. Time to fulfill that vow. At 3:58 a.m., 6 shadows drifted through the Chicago docks with the silence of smoke. Lorenzo's tactical unit was no stranger to such operations. Extractions, hits, missions demanding meticulous precision over brute force. Draped in black tactical gear, their faces obscured, weapons fitted with suppressors, and devoid of badges or identification, they were phantoms. If this mission faltered, they would simply vanish. Despite Marco's protests, Lorenzo spearheaded the advance. Yet, this wasn't an assignment he could delegate. Elena had sought the king, and the king would respond. Tommy Ritchie maintained overwatch from the adjacent building, his night vision scope fixed on the warehouse. 2 guards at the north entrance, 1 smoking. The east dock has 3, but 2 are inside the loading bay. West emergency exit. Single guard appears half asleep. Copy that, Lorenzo whispered into his radio. Marco, take the dock entrance. Vincent, you're with me at the main door. Silent takedowns only. We don't want them calling for backup. Understood. They divided into 2 teams. Lorenzo, Vincent, and a soldier named Tony stealthily approached the main entrance. Marco led the others towards the loading dock. The front guard, perhaps 25, had an assault rifle casually slung over his shoulder, engrossed in his phone, oblivious to the shadows where Lorenzo's team materialized. Vincent, an expert in close-quarters combat honed by ex-Special Forces training, moved first. Swift, efficient, and silent, the guard collapsed without a sound, unconscious before touching the ground. They zip-tied his hands, dragging him behind a dumpster. "North entrance clear," Vincent reported. "Dock entrance clear," Marco's voice crackled back. "Two down, non-lethal." Tommy's voice added, "Perimeter guards completing rotation. You have a 90-second window before they circle back." "Moving in," Lorenzo declared. Vincent produced an electronic lockpick, attaching it to the main door's security panel. The device cycled through combinations in seconds, a testament to Elena's level of hacking expertise. Ironically, the lock clicked open. They entered a dimly lit corridor, emergency lighting casting everything in a sickly yellow hue. The smell immediately assailed Lorenzo. Oil, electronics, and the acrid stench of too many individuals in cramped quarters. From deeper within the building, the hum of generators and computer equipment resonated. Marco's team simultaneously breached from the loading dock. Now, it was 12 against 18, with the element of surprise on their side. "Power controls should be in the east wing," Vincent whispered, consulting blueprints on his tactical tablet. "Cut the main power. Their computers go dark. That's when we extract the girl." "Do it!" Lorenzo commanded. Vincent and Tony peeled off, heading for the electrical room. Lorenzo and two others advanced toward the warehouse's center, where heat signatures had been concentrated. They encountered their first hostile 30 seconds later. A guard rounded a corner, coffee cup in hand, freezing as he saw three armed figures in tactical gear. His hand moved towards his radio. Lorenzo's suppressed pistol coughed twice. The man dropped, coffee spreading across the concrete. "Contact," Lorenzo reported calmly. "Lethal force authorized. They won't take us alive anyway." All pretense of stealth vanished. From somewhere in the building, a shout in Spanish echoed. Footsteps pounded on metal grating. An alarm began to wail. "Power's cut!" Vincent's voice crackled. The lights died. Emergency backup systems activated 2 seconds later, bathing everything in red. Then the gunfire erupted. Mendoza's guards poured out of side rooms, weapons blazing. The warehouse erupted into pandemonium. Muzzle flashes pierced the darkness. Bullets sparked off metal. Shouts in English and Spanish mingled with the staccato rhythm of automatic weapons. Lorenzo's team returned fire with surgical precision. These were not street thugs. They were professionals, trained for precisely this scenario. "Cover, advance, suppress." Marco's voice coordinated movements via radio, while Tommy relayed enemy positions from his overwatch. "Two hostiles, second-floor catwalk, got 'em." Tony responded, his rifle barking twice. Lorenzo moved through the chaos as if he owned it, heading toward the warehouse's core where intelligence indicated Elena was held. Two guards attempted to stop him. He dropped both without breaking stride. "A reinforced door ahead, locked from inside, the computer room, breaching," Lorenzo called out. Marco appeared beside him with a small explosive charge. They stacked up on either side of the door. Marco planted the charge, counting down with his fingers. 3, 2, 1. The explosion was deafening within the enclosed space. The door blew inward, smoke billowing out. Lorenzo entered first, weapon raised. The room was exactly as Vincent had predicted. Computers everywhere, monitors still glowing from battery backup, cables snaking across the floor like industrial spaghetti. And in the center, handcuffed to a chair, sat a teenage girl, Elle Chin. She looked up at the sound of the breach, her eyes wide with terror. Her dark hair was matted with sweat, her wrists bloody from struggling against the zip ties. Tear tracks were still visible on her dirt-smudged face, but her eyes held a fierce intelligence even through the fear. Behind her, a guard raised his weapon. Lorenzo was faster, a single shot to the center mass. The guard collapsed. More gunfire erupted in the hallway. Marco and the others were holding off reinforcements, but they wouldn't last long. The element of surprise was gone. Now, it was purely a matter of firepower and numbers, and the numbers were not in their favor. Lorenzo approached Elena slowly, holstering his weapon so she could see his hands. "Elle Chin?" She nodded, unable to speak. "Your brother Danny sent me." Lorenzo pulled out a knife, cutting through the zip ties binding her wrists. "You told him to find the king. Well, here I am." Elena's eyes welled with tears. "Danny, is he safe?" He's safe, under my protection. Lorenzo helped her stand. Her legs nearly gave out. How long had she been in that chair? He studied her. But we need to move now. The computers, my work. Leave it. We have copies of your notebook. That's all we need. An explosion rocked the building. Marco's voice shouted over the radio. Boss, they called for backup. We have vehicles approaching. Multiple hostiles. Time to go, Lorenzo said firmly. He looked Elena in the eyes, this brilliant, terrified, impossibly brave girl who had endured hours against killers. Can you run? She nodded. Then run with me. He offered his hand. Elena stared at it for half a second. The hand of Chicago's most dangerous crime boss extended in protection. Then she took it. Time to go, genius, Lorenzo said. They ran. Behind them, the warehouse exploded into a war zone. Ahead lay freedom, survival, and the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted. But first, they had to make it out alive. And with Mendoza's reinforcements closing in, that was far from guaranteed. They escaped with 30 seconds to spare. Lorenzo's team extracted through the north entrance, laying down suppressive fire, while Elena ran between Marco and Lorenzo, shielded by their bodies. Two of Lorenzo's men took bullets but kept moving, adrenaline and training overriding pain. Mendoza's reinforcements arrived just as their vehicles screeched away from the docks, bullets sparking off the rear bumper. But by then, Lorenzo's team was already in neutral territory, and pursuit meant an all-out street war neither side was prepared for at 4:30 a.m. They drove in silence. Elena was wedged between Lorenzo and Marco in the back seat, trembling from shock and exhaustion. You're safe now, Lorenzo said quietly. Nobody's going to hurt you. Elena nodded, but didn't speak. Couldn't speak. 6 hours of captivity, terror, and fighting with everything she had had, all caught up to her at once. By 5 a.m., they arrived at Lorenzo's estate in the suburbs, a compound disguised as a luxury home, surrounded by walls, cameras, and men with guns who knew how to use them. Danny was waiting in the foyer. When he saw Elena, he ran to her, and she collapsed into his arms, both of them crying. Lorenzo gave them privacy, stepping into his study where his advisors were already assembling. 30 minutes later, after Elena had showered, eaten, and been checked by Lorenzo's private doctor, she sat in the study, wrapped in a blanket that dwarfed her thin frame. Danny sat beside her, holding her hand as if he would never let go. Lorenzo sat across from them, flanked by Vincent, Marco, Rita, and James. The notebook was spread on the desk between them. Elena, Lorenzo began gently, I need to understand exactly what you found. Not just for your safety, but because what you discovered has implications for everyone in this room. Elena took a shaky breath. I thought it was just a puzzle. Someone posted an encrypted string on Cryptic Minds, a forum I visit. It looked challenging, so I started working on it. When did you realize it wasn't just a puzzle? Vincent asked. About 3 days after, Elena's voice grew stronger as she shifted into technical territory. A familiar challenge. The intricacy of the encryption patterns was striking military-grade SHA-256 variants interwoven with bespoke algorithms. This wasn't the handiwork of an amateur. She retrieved her phone, a device she'd astonishingly kept through countless tribulations, and launched a notes application. I initiated a trace, pinpointed the IP address, and followed it to that specific warehouse. That's when the gravity of the situation became clear, she articulated. The vault, Lorenzo echoed. Mendoza's cryptocurrency reserves. Not just Mendoza's, Elena interjected, her gaze reflecting a complex cocktail of apprehension and thrill. That's what I attempted to convey, but they dismissed me. The vault I uncovered isn't merely a solitary storage unit, it's a nexus. A profound stillness enveloped the room. Vincent leaned forward, eyes intent. What precisely do you mean by a nexus? Elena explained. The encryption I was deciphering wasn't safeguarding an individual vault. It was protecting an entire network. Her words gained momentum, her brilliant intellect finally unleashing the truth she had suppressed. As I delved deeper into the code, I discovered branching pathways, numerous distinct wallet addresses, all interconnected through a central node. The initial vault, the one everyone believed I was cracking, is linked to a minimum of 7 additional major cryptocurrency holdings. James Park's eyes widened significantly. Multiple entities? He questioned. I believe so. I detected anomalous transaction patterns, disparate timings, varying sums, distinct digital signatures. She searched for the precise terminology. It's as if someone established a central banking system for criminal enterprises. All their capital flows through this hub, shielded by shared encryption. This prevents any single individual from accessing it without possessing the master key. Lorenzo exchanged a telling glance with his advisors. A communal vault, he murmured. Numerous cartels consolidating their assets or laundering them, Rita added, her voice resonating with insight. They're concealing money within a collective framework, making it significantly harder to trace back to any singular operation. Precisely, Elena affirmed, pulling up further notes. I had mapped at least 7 distinct branches before they apprehended me. Based on transaction volumes and patterns, I estimated the total holdings to be... She paused, verifying her calculations. Between 2 and 3 billion. The figure reverberated through the room like a seismic shock. Billion, Marco repeated disbelievingly. Not million? Billion, Elena confirmed. Distributed across multiple accounts, yet all accessible via the central vault. Whoever controls the master encryption can observe and access everything. Vincent was already engrossed with his laptop, activating dark wave monitoring instruments. If she's accurate, this transcends Mendoza's operation. This is a syndicate. Multiple criminal organizations collaborating on financial infrastructure. Rita remarked slowly, which indicates that Elena didn't merely discover Mendoza's money. She unearthed everyone's money. The implications settled upon the room with the crushing weight of concrete. That's why they desired her so intensely, James breathed, a newfound understanding in his voice. Not just to crack Mendoza's vault, but to gain access to the entire network. Lorenzo finished, his gaze fixed on Elena. Whoever controls that hub controls everything. And you can crack it. It wasn't a question, Elena nodded. I was 70% complete when they seized me. Perhaps 80% now, given the correct equipment and sufficient time. The encryption is ingenious, but it possesses vulnerabilities. Its designer prioritized inaccessibility over perfection. How long? Lorenzo inquired. 8 hours of focused work, perhaps less. The room erupted in urgent whispers. Marco and Vincent debated security ramifications. Rita and James discussed legal exposures. Everyone spoke over one another, striving to assimilate the bewildering information. Lorenzo raised a hand, and silence descended. He looked at Elena, this exhausted, brilliant, impossibly courageous young woman who had inadvertently unveiled the criminal underworld's Fort Knox. You're perched on a gold mine, he stated quietly, and every cartel, every crime family linked to that vault, they all know it now. Mendoza will have informed them of your capabilities. What you discovered? Elena's face paled. They'll all pursue me. Yes, Lorenzo admitted candidly. They will. Danny squeezed his sister's hand tighter. But you'll protect her, won't you? You promised. Lorenzo's expression softened as he regarded the boy. I did, and I shall. He turned back to Elena. But you must grasp the magnitude of what you've encountered. You are no longer merely valuable to me. You are the most perilous individual in Chicago, perilous to everyone with capital in that vault. What do we do? Elena whispered. Lorenzo leaned back, his mind already formulating strategies, angles, and survival blueprints. We complete what you began, he declared, but on our terms. You will map the entirety of this network for me. Every branch, every account, every connection. We will meticulously document everything. We'll create insurance information that will be released should anything happen to you or Danny. Mutually assured destruction, Rita murmured, a glint in her eye. They cannot harm her without exposing themselves. Precisely. Lorenzo's smile was chilling. Elena, you have inadvertently declared war on Chicago's entire criminal underground. Now, we will ensure they are too terrified to retaliate. Elena looked at her brother, then at Lorenzo. And if I undertake this, if I assist you, what becomes of us? You become untouchable, Lorenzo stated simply. Under my protection, forever. The genius and the king, forging an alliance born of desperation and brilliance, neither truly grasping that it would irrevocably alter everything. For 3 days, Elena labored in a secure chamber Lorenzo had furnished within his compound. It resembled a teenager's ideal tech laboratory: 3 high-end computers, multiple monitors, an ergonomic chair, and snacks within easy reach. Yet, the reinforced door and armed guards stationed outside served as a constant reminder that this was not a gift, but rather both protection and leverage. Vincent worked alongside her, translating her brilliant, yet sometimes fragmented explanations into documentation his team could utilize. Danny sat in a corner, engrossed in his homework, steadfastly refusing to leave his sister's side. By the close of day 2, Elena had successfully mapped the entire vault network, and 7 major branches, each corresponding to a distinct criminal organization: Mendoza's South Side Cartel, the Russian mob operating from West Chicago, 2 rival Mexican cartels, a Chinese triad, a Nigerian fraud ring, and 1 branch that Vincent couldn't immediately identify. The transactions were so meticulously laundered and obscured, they screamed of professional execution. Could be international terrorism, Vincent posited, or a rogue government operation. Either way, they are interconnected with everyone else. Elena displayed a visualization she had created, a sophisticated network diagram illustrating the flow of money between the branches. It's ingenious, actually. Each organization deposits their illicit funds into their specific branch. The central hub then automatically launders it through thousands of microtransactions, subsequently redistributing it as cleansed investment returns. It's akin to a criminal stock market. Lorenzo studied the diagram with a cold appreciation. Who manages the hub? No single individual. It's algorithmic automated. That's its security strength. No single point of failure. No human element susceptible to betrayal. Except you cracked it, Vincent pointed out. I discovered the back door, Elena corrected. The system's designer left administrative access for themselves, likely for maintenance. That's the vulnerability I exploited. Lorenzo turned to James Park, who had been conducting financial analyses. What's our move? James fanned documents across the table. We have options. Option 1, we completely drain the vault. $3 billion materializes in accounts under our control. We become instant billionaires, and every criminal organization in North America declares war on us. Pass, Lorenzo stated dryly. Option 2, we sell the access codes to the highest bidder. Let someone else absorb the blowback and relinquish all our leverage. Also pass. Option 3, Rita interjected, is the astute play. We use this intelligence strategically, release portions of it to the authorities, foment chaos among our adversaries, and position ourselves as the sole stable operation remaining. Lorenzo's eyes glinted. Continue. Rita unfurled a map of Chicago, marked with territorial boundaries. Mendoza has encroached upon our territory for years. The Russians have been undercutting our protection rates. The cartels vie with our import operations. Currently, they are all cooperating through this shared vault. But what transpires if they lose faith in one another? They'll tear each other apart, Marco said, comprehension dawning. Exactly. We don't empty the vault. We expose fragments of it. Anonymous tips to the FBI regarding Mendoza's shell companies, leaked documents about Russian money laundering, just enough to trigger federal raids and asset freezes. Vincent nodded enthusiastically. And while they're contending with law enforcement and blaming each other for the leaks, we secure the core system. Elena generates new encryption that only we control. The vault becomes ours without us ever having to pilfer a single dollar. Lorenzo looked at Elena. Can you achieve that? Lock them out while maintaining the illusion that the system remains functional? Elena bit her lip, deep in thought. I would need to construct a new layer of encryption atop the existing structure. From their perspective, everything appears normal. They can view their balances, monitor transactions, but they cannot genuinely access the money without a key that only we possess. How long? 2 days, perhaps 3. And the federal tip? Lorenzo looked at Rita. I have contacts, former prosecutors, current FBI agents who are beholden to me. I can funnel information through untraceable channels. Rita's smile was sharp. We could have raids commencing by week's end. Lorenzo paced the room, everyone's gaze fixed on him. This was the pivotal moment, the decision that would either elevate his enterprise or shatter it. Finally, he turned to Elena. Begin developing the new encryption. Vincent, assist her. I demand a complete lockdown of that vault by Friday. Elena nodded, already turning back to her computers. Rita, prepare the federal packages. I want Mendoza targeted first. His shell companies, his offshore accounts, everything. Make it appear as though an insider within his organization betrayed him. Consider it done. Marco, tighten security across all our operations. When this explodes, chaos will reign, and I need our people prepared for anything. Understood, boss. James, initiate the offshore transfer of our assets. Should the Fed start scrutinizing criminal financial networks, I don't want them tracing anything back to us. Lorenzo surveyed his team, his extended family gathered in the room. In just 72 hours, we are poised to shift the balance of power in Chicago. Those organizations that have been pressuring us, testing our limits, treating us as just another crew, they are about to discover the folly of challenging a king. Thursday morning heralded a coordinated assault as federal agents simultaneously raided 6 of Mendoza's shell companies. By Thursday afternoon, 3 of his bank accounts were frozen solid, and 2 of his key lieutenants found themselves in federal custody. Friday saw the Russian mob's intricate money laundering operation spectacularly exposed through an anonymous tip to the Chicago Tribune, rendering their legitimate business fronts toxic overnight. On Saturday, ICE descended upon properties linked to both Mexican cartels, leading to dozens of arrests and the seizure of millions in cash. The criminal underworld convulsed in a paroxysm of paranoid chaos. Whispers of betrayal echoed through the streets. Who was leaking information? Who was collaborating with the feds? Each faction pointed fingers at the others. Old alliances fractured, and violence erupted as trust evaporated. Yet, through this maelstrom, Lorenzo's enterprise hummed along smoothly, untouched, elevated above the fray. While others were embroiled in internecine warfare, Elena Chen was meticulously constructing impenetrable digital walls around $3 billion that no one else even knew existed. Sunday evening, she finally looked up from her computer, utterly exhausted but undeniably triumphant. It's done. The vault is locked. Only we can access it now. Vincent meticulously verified her work, running numerous tests against the encryption. It's flawless. They can see their money, but they will never be able to touch it, and they'll never suspect that we're the ones holding the key. Lorenzo stood by his window, watching the sunset paint the Chicago skyline. Somewhere out there, Mendoza was desperately scrambling to salvage the remnants of his crumbling empire. The Russians were on the brink of an internal war. The cartels were hemorrhaging both funds and personnel. And right here, in his compound, a 16-year-old girl had just handed him dominion over the entire criminal underworld's fortune. "Boss," Marco announced from the doorway, "we're receiving calls. Every organization wants a meeting. They somehow believe we're immune to all this." Lorenzo allowed himself a subtle smile. "Tell them I'll consider their requests after they acknowledge proper territorial boundaries." "You're going to make them beg for peace." "No," Lorenzo corrected, his gaze firm. "I'm going to make them understand that Chicago is mine. It always has been." He turned his attention to Elena, who was showing Danny something on her screen, likely explaining the complex mathematics behind her encryption. 2 young individuals, one desperate gamble, and now the king held all the cards. "Welcome to the family, Elena," Lorenzo said softly. She looked up, startled. "You just became the most valuable person in my organization," he continued, "and I protect what's valuable." Elena managed a tired, tentative smile. "Does this mean I'm a criminal now?" "No," Lorenzo replied. "It means you're untouchable. The genius and the king, an unbreakable alliance forged." Monday afternoon, Lorenzo summoned Elena and Danny to his private study. This room, unlike the functional war room, where strategies were meticulously plotted, exuded an air of refined permanence with its leather-bound books, exquisite artwork, and furniture that spoke of legacy rather than mere power. It was here that Lorenzo conducted his most pivotal business. Elena and Danny sat opposite his impressive desk, both exhibiting a palpable nervousness despite the steadfast protection they had enjoyed for days. Danny fidgeted with the sleeve of his new jacket. Lorenzo's people had provided them with proper attire since their apartment was no longer an option. Lorenzo poured 3 glasses of sparkling cider, sliding 2 across to them. Danny looked utterly bewildered until Elena whispered, "It's like a business meeting." "It is a business meeting," Lorenzo confirmed, sinking into his chair. "One of the most consequential I've ever had." Elena straightened her posture, attempting to project an air of maturity beyond her 16 years. "You want something from me for the vault access?" Smart girl, but not quite right. Lorenzo took a sip of his drink. "I want to discuss your future, both of your futures." Danny, his voice small but tinged with a nascent courage, spoke up. "Are you sending us away?" "Quite the opposite." Lorenzo leaned forward intently. "Elena, in the past week, you have accomplished something truly remarkable. You inadvertently unearthed a $3 billion criminal network, survived kidnapping at the hands of one of Chicago's most dangerous cartels, and then helped me secure that entire network with an encryption that even the NSA would struggle to crack." Elena nodded slowly, absorbing his words. "Most people in your situation would be liabilities, problems to be solved, witnesses to be silenced." Lorenzo's tone was dispassionately factual. "But you are not most people. You are a once-in-a-generation genius who happens to be 16 years old and currently has nowhere to go." "Our apartment," Elena began. "Is compromised," Lorenzo gently interrupted. "Mendoza knows where you lived, so do the Russians, and likely every other organization that has figured out someone locked them out of their money. You can never go back there." The words struck Elena with the force of a physical blow. Her home, her entire life, everything she had meticulously rebuilt after her parents' deaths, all gone. Danny's hand instinctively found hers under the desk. "So, what happens to us?" Elena asked, fighting to keep her voice steady, betraying no hint of the turmoil within. Lorenzo rose and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "I am going to make you an offer. Not a threat, not a demand. A genuine offer that you are entirely free to refuse." "And if we refuse?" Elena inquired cautiously. "Then I will arrange new identities for both of you, settle you in another city with sufficient funds to live comfortably, and we will never speak again." Lorenzo turned to face them directly. "You would be safe, I would ensure that, but you would be alone, 2 children against the world." Elena pondered this stark choice. A new city, new names, perpetually looking over their shoulders. Danny attempting to forge friendships while constantly concealing his true identity. Her, trying to pursue her passion for mathematics and coding while pretending she hadn't just crippled the criminal underworld's finances. "What's the offer?" she finally asked. Lorenzo returned to his desk. "You stay here, under my protection. Danny will continue his schooling, a private, excellent education, with everything he needs. You, too, will continue your studies. I have connections at Northwestern University. They boast one of the country's premier computer science programs. You could attend early, on a full scholarship, no questions asked." Elena's eyes widened. Northwestern was a dream she had never thought attainable. "In exchange," Lorenzo continued, "you will work for me, not as muscle, not as a criminal, but as precisely what you are, a genius. You will assist Vincent in securing our digital operations, protecting our networks, and occasionally consult on matters that demand your unique skill set." "You want me to be your hacker?" Elena said, a hint of incredulity in her voice. "I want you to be my technology advisor," Lorenzo corrected, his tone precise. "There's a critical difference. Hackers breach systems for one-time engagements. Advisors construct lasting security, foster innovation, and safeguard assets. You would have a legitimate role, a legitimate salary, and legitimate protections." "Legitimate," Elena repeated, skepticism threading through her voice. "In a criminal organization?" Lorenzo permitted himself a slight smile. "I operate businesses, Elena, restaurants, real estate, import-export operations. Yes, some of those businesses are not entirely legal, but many are. You would be working in the legitimate sectors, with occasional consultation on the rest." Rita Duca entered the study, carrying a stack of folders. She placed them on the desk. Contracts, legal documents, all immaculately formatted. "This is a formal employment offer," Rita explained. "A salary of $150,000 annually, plus housing, education expenses for both of you, health insurance, and a trust fund for Danny's future education. Completely legal, filed with the IRS, everything above board. Elena stared at the impressive figure. With her freelance work, she had been making perhaps $30,000 a year, barely enough to cover rent and Danny's necessities. "And what about the other part?" she asked, referring to the vault and the encryption. "Kept completely separate," Rita assured her. "On paper, you are a technology consultant. What you consult on is strictly between you and Lorenzo. Plausible deniability." Danny tugged at Elena's sleeve. "Does this mean we can stay together?" Lorenzo's expression softened. "It means you'd be family, Danny. Not blood family, but the kind that truly matters. You would live here in the compound. There's an entire wing prepared just for both of you. Your own rooms, your own space, but never alone. Never unprotected." "Why?" Elena asked suddenly, her gaze fixed on Lorenzo. "Why go through all this for us? You could simply force me to work for you. You're a crime boss. You don't need to offer contracts and college funds." Lorenzo settled back into his chair, meeting her eyes directly. "Because I am not interested in slaves or prisoners, Elena. I am interested in loyalty. Real loyalty. The kind that stems from profound respect, not from fear." He gestured towards the contracts. "Your parents passed away 2 years ago. You have been raising Danny alone, working yourself to exhaustion, trying to embody both sister and parent. You are brilliant, but you are 16. You should not have to bear that immense weight by yourself." His voice acquired a different resonance, shedding the coldness of a crime boss for something akin to genuine empathy. "I have constructed an empire on understanding true value. And you, Elena, you are the most valuable asset I have encountered in 30 years. Not because of what you can steal from me, but because of what you can build, what you can protect, what you can ultimately become." He leaned forward, his words imbued with a quiet power. "A king does not steal from geniuses, Elena. He embraces them as allies. He provides them with resources, protection, and the unequivocal freedom to flourish. Because a genius who chooses loyalty is worth infinitely more than 100 soldiers who serve out of fear." Elena glanced down at the contracts, then across at Danny, whose eyes held a desperate, hopeful plea. "If I say yes," she said slowly, "can Danny have a normal life? School, friends, everything?" "Given the circumstances, I'll need to be careful. But yes, he can be a kid," Lorenzo affirmed, embracing a semblance of normalcy. "And you? Can you continue your studies, keep acquiring knowledge?" he probed. "I'd be disappointed if you didn't," he added, emphasizing. "Your intellect is your most potent weapon. I want it honed." Elena paused, contemplating her precarious situation. Stripped of parents, home, and secure prospects, 2 paths lay before her. She could flee, accepting Lorenzo's offer of relocation, and forever glance over her shoulder, or she could embrace this peculiar partnership with a man who had not only saved her life, but seemingly valued her capabilities. Her decision solidified as she picked up a pen. "Where do I sign?" she asked, her voice steady. Lorenzo's smile, genuine and warm, bordered on pride. "Welcome to the family, Elena Chen," he said. Danny's radiant grin could have illuminated the entire room. The prodigious mind and the kingpin had formalized their alliance, forever altering the landscape of Chicago's underworld. 6 weeks later, Elena Chen stood in her laboratory truly her own. Surrounded by technology previously relegated to dreams, the space boasted 3 workstations with top-tier processors, 6 monitors arranged in a semicircle, and a quietly humming server rack. 2 walls, covered in whiteboards, were filled with her meticulous handwriting, algorithms, security protocols, and mathematical proofs capable of making doctoral candidates weep. She was engrossing herself in coding a new firewall system for Lorenzo's legitimate enterprises, safeguarding them from corporate espionage. The work was entirely legal and utterly captivating. Through the lab's expansive windows, she observed the estate grounds. Danny, now a vibrant 10-year-old, was playing basketball with Marco's teenage nephew. Their gleeful laughter punctuated missed shots, bringing a smile to Elena's face. Danny had enrolled in a private school under a meticulously crafted identity, forming friendships, joining the chess club, and shedding the crushing burden of survival for the carefree demeanor of a normal child. His happiness alone validated Elena's life-altering choice. "Knock knock," Vincent announced from the doorway, holding 2 steaming cups of coffee. "Thought you could use some fuel." Elena accepted a cup with gratitude. Vincent had evolved into a blend of colleague and older brother, patiently imparting advanced cybersecurity techniques, while simultaneously learning from Elena's innovative problem-solving approaches that had eluded him for years. "How's the firewall progressing?" he inquired. "Almost complete," she replied. "This design should prove impenetrable to anything short of state-level hackers." She presented her code, showcasing its elegant architecture, multi-layered authentication, quantum-resistant encryption, and adaptive response protocols. Vincent let out an appreciative whistle. "Northwestern will adore you. You start in January, correct?" he asked. "Early enrollment program," Elena confirmed. "Computer science and mathematics double major." Lorenzo has already made all the arrangements. The reality still felt surreal. College at 16, a full scholarship, pursuing her passions without the gnawing worries of rent, food, or Danny's safety. It felt like a dream from which she expected to wake. Yet, it was her tangible new reality. In his opulent office, Lorenzo calmly reviewed reports with Rita and James. "Mendoza is finished," James declared, sliding documents across the desk. "Federal prosecution on money laundering charges. His assets are frozen, his soldiers dispersed. The South Side operation has completely collapsed." "The Russians?" Lorenzo probed. "Infighting," Rita reported with distinct satisfaction. 3 distinct factions vying for leadership, each blaming the others for the security breaches. They're too busy dismantling themselves to pose a threat to anyone else. "The cartels have retreated to their home territories," James continued. "They lost so much capital in the raids, they can no longer afford operations in Chicago." He smiled triumphantly. "The power vacuum you orchestrated, we've filled it quietly, efficiently. Our territories have expanded by 30% without a single additional shot fired." Lorenzo nodded, pleased but not surprised. When one controls $3 billion in hidden assets and has systematically dismantled rivals through strategic information leaks, expansion is not merely probable but inevitable. "Any blowback?" he asked Rita. "None directly," she replied. "The feds are still investigating the organizations we exposed, but they haven't connected anything to us. As far as they're concerned, we're legitimate businessmen who simply got lucky when our competitors imploded." "And the vault is locked tight," Vincent added, entering the office. "Elena's encryption is holding perfectly. Every organization connected to that network can see their money, but none can access it. They are trapped in a financial purgatory." "Have any of them realized we control it?" Lorenzo asked. "Not yet. They're too consumed by mutual suspicion," Vincent replied, taking a seat. "But eventually, someone will discern that we're the only operation untouched, the only ones who grew stronger. By then," Lorenzo stated calmly, "we'll possess such formidable legitimate power that it won't matter. Let them suspect. They can't prove anything, and they can't touch us without exposing their own criminal activities." He rose and walked to the window overlooking Elena's lab. She was intensely focused, completely absorbed in her code. Danny's laughter drifted up from the basketball court below. 2 children, 1 desperate gamble 6 weeks ago, and now everything had undeniably changed. That evening, Lorenzo visited Elena's lab. She was still diligently working despite the late hour, having transitioned from firewalls to what appeared to be a research paper. "Homework?" he inquired, a hint of amusement in his voice. Elena flinched slightly, then smiled. "Preparation for Northwestern. I'm authoring a theoretical paper on quantum encryption vulnerabilities." "For fun?" Lorenzo repeated, intrigued. "Most 16-year-olds watch movies for entertainment." "Most 16-year-olds aren't me," she retorted, saving her work and turning to face him. "Did you require something?" "Just checking in," Lorenzo replied, settling into one of her ergonomic, state-of-the-art lab chairs. "How are you settling in?" "It's strange," Elena admitted. "Good strange, but strange nonetheless. A mere month and a half ago, I was struggling to pay rent and worrying about feeding Danny. Now I possess a laboratory, college acceptance, and a crime boss who inquires about my homework." "Life is replete with surprises," Lorenzo commented dryly. Elena chuckled, a genuine, unforced sound. It had become more frequent lately. The haunted expression that had etched itself onto her face during those initial days had receded, replaced by a lightness, perhaps hope, or simply security. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice tinged with emotion, "for everything, for saving me, for protecting Danny, for giving us this life." "You earned it," Lorenzo replied. "You confronted Chicago's criminal underworld with nothing but your intellect and emerged victorious. That commands respect." "We both won," Elena corrected. "You gained control of $3 billion and eliminated your rivals. I secured my brother's safety and a future. A fair trade." "A fair trade indeed," Lorenzo agreed. He rose to leave, then paused. "Elena, when you were in that warehouse fighting for your life, did you ever envision this outcome?" She pondered the question for a moment. "No, I envisioned dying, or something worse. But you persisted nonetheless." "Danny needed me to," she explained. "And She searched for the right words. "I refused to let them win. Even if it meant my death, I wouldn't give them what they desired." Lorenzo smiled, a rare, genuine expression his enemies never witnessed. "That stubbornness, that refusal to break, that's what makes you valuable. Not the genius, though, that certainly helps. It's the courage." He walked to the door, then turned back one last time. "Welcome home, Elena." Chicago's underworld had irrevocably shifted. Old powers had crumbled, new territories had been claimed, and at the heart of it all, an unlikely alliance held firm. A kingpin who had recognized genius, a prodigy who had discovered protection and purpose, and a 10-year-old boy who had gambled everything on a legend and won. Lorenzo Vitali had gained the most invaluable asset of his career. Elena and Danny Chen had found a family. And Chicago had achieved a new balance of power, forged not through violence or fear, but through intellect, audacity, and the extraordinary bonds formed when a desperate child implored a king for help. Sometimes, the most dangerous alliances are the ones no one anticipates, and sometimes those alliances change everything.